Look at this, Arizona right now, 11 electoral votes, 94% of the vote is in, meaning 6% still outstanding. Biden maintains his lead. It's at 38,455. He has 49.9%. Trump has 48.6%. Biden maintains his lead in Arizona. Once again, 11 electoral votes. Let's bring in the Arizona Secretary of State, Katie Hobbs, who's joining us right now. Secretary Hobbs, thanks so much for joining us. How many outstanding ballots are there in Arizona right now? How many of those are in Maricopa County right now, the largest county there?
So we're looking at about 235,000 outstanding ballots. About 135,000 of those are in Maricopa County, and we're about 2 hours away from their next update of the votes they've tabulated today.
And how many do you think we're going to get in the next 2 hours?
Their updates have been between 60 and 70,000 votes, and so we're expecting the same amount this time, somewhere in that amount, which will bring them down to below 100,000.
That's a significant number.
And I should say that we don't know how many of those are provisionals.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say we're not sure how many of those are provisionals, but of the regular ballots, they anticipate being done this weekend, as well as, most of the rest of the state. And then we'll just be looking at provisionals, which are a much smaller portion of that entire amount.
Madam Secretary, it's John King. Thank you for your time. I know you're very busy, and we appreciate the transparency in the process. You say this weekend, we've had this conversation before. I know you understand the stakes, but the American people are waiting to know who their president is. And they had an election on Tuesday. Now, we get the extraordinary times because of COVID, because of the different ways people voted this year. But when you say this weekend, I know you're the Secretary of State and these counties have to do it on their own. But what message have you delivered to them to do this, get it right, but do it as quickly as possible?
Just exactly that. They're doing their jobs. Maricopa County's been counting around the clock, and in Arizona.
Let me say this: that thank you for being on my channel. There isn't a rush. Take your time. Count all the votes. A president does not become president until what? January 20th at 12 noon. Okay, 12 noon. So if it takes a little while, that's okay. And that's okay. The country will be well served that way.
Counties have 5 business days after the election to resolve provisional ballots. And so any of those ballots that are provisional, they won't be able to count until Wednesday. I don't know how much of the Maricopa ballots are provisional ballots. It's a small number, I'm sure, but there is that issue as well.
About how many provisional ballots do you anticipate we'll see?
So Pima County has 18,000. And we don't know, and the rest of the state is pretty small numbers. I don't know. Maricopa hasn't told us how many of theirs are provisional yet.
Is that part of the 235,000 ballots, or is it on top of the 235?
Yeah. Part of the 235.
It is part of that. Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, I don't think this is the case in your state, but the President of the United States, just a short time ago, again, tweeting to the effect that he would be fine if people would just count the election ballots and stop counting. Now, in your state, he's actually narrowed the lead. So, again, I've used the term, to be polite about it, intellectual inconsistency with saying I don't like what's happening in Pennsylvania and Georgia. But in your state, the president has narrowed the lead. Joe Biden's lead this morning was about 47,000 votes. Now it's down to about 38,000 votes. Just in terms of the count, I know this is a redundant question, but with people stirring up questions about what's going on, why is it taking so long? Why is it Friday night? And we're waiting to know how the American people voted on Tuesday. Can you just explain in these rooms how many eyes are on people as they count these ballots? Do both campaigns have people within proximity? So if there are any questions, somebody could raise their hand and say, can you show me that? Can I make sure that ballot is correct?
Absolutely, 100%. Both parties are allowed to have observers in the room. And then the other thing going on is the adjudication boards. And I know you've had footage of the tabulation room up on your site. You can see the adjudication boards working. They're checking the ballots that the tabulator couldn't read, and those boards are one person from each party. There's an inspector that oversees them, and there are so many eyes on the process to ensure the fairness of the process.
Let me follow up, Secretary Hobbs, because the president.
Now, this is interesting.
to allege on Twitter fraud. His campaign is filing several lawsuits.
Now, this is interesting, that we know that there's been a lot of voter suppression in the last few years. But notice that, hey, they're looking at the vote. Okay, you have a Democrat and a Republican, and they're watching the entire process. It's very, very transparent. And I would say this is probably one of the most transparent processes we've ever had.
Around the country. To be clear to our viewers,
go back a little bit. Okay.
Because the president, as you know, he's continuing to allege on Twitter fraud. His campaign is filing several lawsuits around the country. To be clear to our viewers and all Americans, and indeed to people watching us around the world, are you, as the Secretary of State of Arizona, aware of any fraud or irregularities in your state?
There are absolutely no irregularities happening in this process whatsoever. And anyone making claims to the contrary absolutely just has no idea what they're talking about.
Have you received any legal challenges at all from the president or his campaign or his supporters?
To my knowledge, they did move to intervene in the lawsuit, baseless lawsuit over the Sharpies.
And just remind our viewers, because that was totally ridiculous, that whole Sharpie thing. But tell our viewers, it's got a lot of publicity out there, especially on social media. Remind us what happened.
Yeah, so Maricopa County, the particular tabulators that they use, the manufacturer recommends Sharpies as the tool, the ballot marking pens. That's what the poll workers gave the voters, and somebody somewhere decided that this was bad because in some counties you can't use Sharpies because it bleeds through and the tabulator can't read it. It doesn't matter if the tabulator can read it, we still count the votes. But in this case, it was not causing any problems. There were no ballots rejected because of the Sharpies, but this spread like wildfire. It's a baseless conspiracy theory that we are now dealing with a lawsuit over.
And to that degree, look, there are Democratic governors in Pennsylvania. The president doesn't like the way the vote count went there. There are Democratic governors in Michigan and Wisconsin. The president doesn't like the fact Joe Biden has won those states. You have a Republican governor who's been an ally of this president. I saw a statement from him earlier today saying every legally cast ballot should be counted. Didn't say anything about irregularities or fraud. Do you feel any political pressure within the borders of Arizona, or has this been a bipartisan effort to just count the votes and do it right, or are you nervous at all about the political dynamics here?
No, it's absolutely been a bipartisan effort, and regardless of what anyone says, we are going to keep counting the ballots. That is what we are legally required to do, and that's what is happening.
Madam Secretary, grateful for your time. I know you're very busy trying to get this count finished, and we're grateful for your time and your transparency. Thank you.
So in America, we count the ballots. And if Trump wins, God bless him, he's president again. And if Biden wins, God bless him. So count all the ballots. It's a fair process. This is called democracy. Democracy.